The foundation cracks. The cough started on a Tuesday. Not a real cough, mind you. I'd perfected it over 3 days of practice in my truck during lunch breaks at the construction site. A deep, rattling sound that came from somewhere near my diaphragm, followed by a wheeze that sounded genuinely concerning. 25 years in the construction business teaches you a lot about reading people, about knowing when someone's trying to pull one over on you. But it also teaches you how to put on a show when you need to. Jack, you really should see someone about that, Victoria said, barely glancing up from her phone as she sat at our kitchen island, scrolling through what I assumed were medical journals but could have been anything. The morning light caught her blonde hair, styled perfectly even at 6 a.m. She'd been up since 4:30, her usual routine before a 12-hour shift at Metropolitan General. I forced another cough, this one with a slight grimace. It's just the dust from the Riverside project. We're doing demo work this week. Her fingers never stopped moving across the screen. Well, take some of that cough syrup in the medicine cabinet, the one with codeine. Can't. Makes me drowsy, and I've got that meeting with the union reps today. She finally looked up, and for a moment I saw something flicker across her face. Annoyance? Frustration? It was gone before I could be sure. Jack, the reunion is this weekend. I can't show up with you hacking up a lung. People will think you have TB or something. The medical school reunion. She'd been talking about it for months, marking it on every calendar in the house, ordering a new dress online that cost more than most people's mortgage payments. Victoria had always been particular about appearances, but lately she'd become obsessive. Maybe I should stay home, I suggested, watching her reaction carefully. Let you network without worrying about me. Don't be ridiculous. But there was something in her tone. Relief? You're coming. I already RSVP'd for both of us. Just try to get better by Friday, okay? She stood, smoothing down her scrubs, and I noticed she was wearing new perfume. Something expensive and floral that seemed too fancy for a day in the ER. When had she started wearing perfume to work? Another late shift tonight? I asked. Trauma rotation. You know how it is. She grabbed her coffee tumbler, the one I'd given her for our 10th anniversary, engraved with World's Best Wife, and headed for the door. Don't wait up. I watched her leave, the sound of her Mercedes purring to life in the garage. Then I coughed again, just for practice. The construction site was bustling when I arrived. Sullivan Construction had 3 major projects running simultaneously, and I made it a point to visit each one daily. My foreman, Mike, met me at the trailer with blueprints and coffee. "Boss, you sound like death," he said, hearing my practiced cough. "Just a bug. Listen, I might need to take Friday off. Can you handle the union meeting?" Mike nodded. "Sure thing. That reunion thing, right? The wife's been going on about it?" I'd mentioned it once, maybe twice. But in construction, gossip traveled faster than safety violations. "Yeah, she's excited. Must be nice, all those doctors getting together to talk about their golf handicaps and yacht clubs." Mike grinned, but there was an edge to it. He'd been with me since the beginning, when Sullivan Construction was just me, him, and a borrowed pickup truck. He knew Victoria had never quite approved of my blue-collar empire, despite the 7-figure income it generated. Something like that. I signed off on a materials order, my mind elsewhere. "Hey, Mike, you still got that cousin who does private investigation work?" "Tommy? Yeah, why?" "Just thinking about running background checks on some new subcontractors. You know how it is." Mike studied me for a moment. We'd known each other too long for him not to sense something was off, but he also knew when not to push. "I'll get you his number." The rest of the week crawled by. Victoria worked 3 more late shifts, coming home after midnight each time, slipping into bed smelling like hospital disinfectant and that new perfume. She'd shower immediately, even though she always showered at the hospital after her shifts. When I'd asked about it once, she'd said something about new infection control protocols. Thursday night, she packed her bag for the reunion with unusual care. I watched from the bed, coughing periodically, as she folded a black cocktail dress I'd never seen before. "That new?" I asked. "This?" "No, I've had it forever. You just never notice these things." She added a pair of heels that definitely were new, red soles, the kind that cost a fortune. "How are you feeling?" "Terrible," I lied, adding a wheeze for effect. "Vic, I don't think I can make it." "I'd hate to embarrass you showing up sick." She paused in her packing, and I saw her shoulders relax slightly. "Are you sure?" "I mean, I could stay home if you're really sick." "No, no. This is important to you. Go, network, have fun. I'll probably just sleep all weekend anyway." She came over and kissed my forehead, a perfunctory gesture, like checking a patient's temperature. "You're a little warm. Take some ibuprofen. I'll have my phone if you need anything." "The conference center probably has spotty reception," I said. "Don't worry about checking in. Focus on reconnecting with everyone. You're the best." Another kiss, this one on the cheek, and she was back to packing. "I'll be back Sunday evening. There's soup in the freezer and—" "Vic, I ran a construction company from a hospital bed after my back surgery. I think I can manage a weekend alone with a cold." She laughed, but it sounded forced. "Right. Of course. I just worry." "No, you don't," I thought, watching her zip up the suitcase. "You haven't worried about me in months." Friday morning came with elaborate goodbyes. Victoria hovered by the door, suitcase in hand, as if waiting for something. "Have fun," I said from the couch, wrapped in a blanket for effect. "Take lots of pictures." "I will. Feel better, okay?" And then she was gone. I waited exactly 30 minutes, enough time for her to get on the highway, too far to turn back for a forgotten item, before I got up, showered, and put on jeans and a work shirt. The cough disappeared like smoke. Mike was waiting at the office with his cousin Tommy, a thin guy in his 40s who looked like he'd seen too much and cared too little. Former cop, Mike had said. Now he did freelance security consulting, which was code for private investigation. "Mike says you need some background checks," Tommy said, not bothering with pleasantries. "Something like that." I pulled out a piece of paper with Victoria's name and the conference center information. I need to know if someone actually checks into this event. Tommy looked at the paper, then at me. "This your wife?" "Does it matter?" "It does for my rate." Domestic stuff costs extra. Too much drama, too much potential for violence. There won't be any violence. I pulled out my checkbook. "How much?" $5,000 for the weekend. I'll tell you where she goes, who she sees, what she does. Photos, if you want them. I want everything. Tommy pocketed the check. "You sure you want to know?" Sometimes ignorance really is bliss. "I'm in construction, Tommy. I tear down rotten foundations for a living. Can't build something solid on lies." He nodded slowly. "I'll be in touch." Saturday was the longest day of my life. I went to the office, tried to focus on blueprints and contracts, but my mind kept wandering. At noon, I gave up and drove home, where I did something I'd never done before. I went through Victoria's things. Her home office was pristine, organized to the point of obsession. Medical journals lined one wall, awards and certificates on another. Pictures of us from happier times sat on the desk, though I noticed they were all from at least 2 years ago. When had we stopped taking pictures together? Her laptop was password protected, but I knew her patterns. She used variations of the same password for everything. Her birth year, plus our anniversary date. It took 3 tries before I got in. Her email was mostly hospital correspondence, patient notes, which I didn't read. I had limits. and shopping confirmations. But her credit card statements, those told a different story. Charges at restaurants I'd never heard of, always for amounts that suggested two people. Hotels in the city for afternoon conferences that didn't appear on the hospital's CME calendar I found online. My phone buzzed. Tommy. Your wife never checked into the reunion, he said without preamble. I've got contacts at the hotel. She's not registered, never was. My stomach dropped, even though I'd suspected it. Where is she? Working on it. Her phone's off, but I'll find her. Always do. I spent the rest of Saturday going through our bank statements, phone records, anything I could access. The pattern became clear once I knew what to look for. Tuesday night emergencies that coincided with charges at a wine bar downtown. Weekend conferences that matched up with luxury hotel charges. How long had this been going on? That evening, I did something else I'd never done before. I reached out to my old army buddy, Ray Kowalski. Ray had gone into law enforcement after we got out, worked his way up to detective in the major crimes unit. We hadn't talked in years, but some bonds don't break. Jack Sullivan, he answered on the second ring. I heard you became some kind of construction mogul. Something like that. Ray, I need a favor. Not official, just advice. This about Victoria? I paused. How did you? Brother, I'm a detective. You don't call me for 5 years, then suddenly reach out on a Saturday night? It's either legal trouble or woman trouble, and you're too smart for the first one. Can we meet? Tomorrow. Murphy's Bar, noon. And Jack? Whatever you're thinking about doing, don't. Not until we talk. I agreed and hung up, then poured myself 3 fingers of whiskey and sat in the dark living room, staring at the wedding photos on the mantel. In them, Victoria looked at me with such love, such promise. When had that changed? Or had it all been an act, even then? Tommy called again at 10 p.m. Found her. Mountain View Resort, about 4 hours north. Checked in under her maiden name, but it's her. Driving a Mercedes, license plate matches. Is she alone? There was a pause. No. Red Maserati in the next spot. Registered to a doctor. Antonio Reeves. Mean anything to you? Antonio Reeves. The name hit me like a sledgehammer. Victoria's department chief. The cardiovascular surgeon she'd mentioned dozens of times, always with professional admiration. The divorced playboy who, according to hospital gossip she'd shared, went through nurses like surgical gloves. Yeah, I said quietly. It means something. Want me to get photos? Get everything. Sunday came gray and drizzling, fitting my mood perfectly. I met Ray at Murphy's, a cop bar that hadn't changed in 20 years. He looked older, grayer, but his eyes were still sharp. Tell me everything, he said. So I did. The late nights, the new perfume, the credit card charges, and now this. The fake reunion, the resort, Reeves. Ray listened without interrupting, occasionally sipping his beer. When I finished, he leaned back. What do you want, Jack? Divorce? Revenge? Both? I want the truth. All of it. Truth's dangerous. Sometimes it's worse than the lies. I can handle it. Ray studied me. You always were tougher than you looked. Okay, here's what you're going to do. Nothing. Not yet. You gather evidence, build a case, protect your assets. You move smart, not emotional. And you don't do anything that lands you in jail because, trust me, she's not worth it. I wasn't planning on violence, Ray. No, but you were planning something. I can see it in your eyes. That same look you had in Fallujah before that ambush mission. Cold, calculated. Just remember, this is civilian life. Different rules. Different rules, I agreed. But same principle, know your enemy. We talked for another hour, Ray giving me practical advice about lawyers, asset protection, surveillance laws. As I was leaving, he grabbed my arm. Jack, I'm going to look into this Reeves guy. Something about this feels off. Doctors having affairs is one thing, but the maiden name, the secretive behavior. Just be careful, okay? I drove home in the rain, my mind racing. Victoria wasn't due back until evening, which gave me time. I called Tommy. I need you to expand the surveillance, not just this weekend. I need to know everything. Where she goes, who she sees, what she does. And Reeves, too. That's going to cost. I don't care about the cost. I need leverage. Leverage for what? For whatever comes next. I spent the afternoon installing something I'd never thought I'd need. Hidden cameras. As a construction company owner, I had access to the best surveillance equipment on the market. Tiny, motion-activated cameras that uploaded to the cloud. I put them in the living room, the kitchen, our bedroom. Not in the bathroom. I still had some principles. Then I went to my office and started making lists. Assets to protect, accounts to secure, documents to copy. If this was going to be war, I needed to prepare the battlefield. Victoria came home at 7:43 p.m., breezing through the door with her suitcase and a bright smile. Hey, baby. Feeling better? I was on the couch, back in my sick person costume. A little. How was the reunion? Oh, amazing. So good to see everyone. She launched into a detailed story about people she'd supposedly seen, conversations she'd had. The lies flowed so easily, so naturally. If I hadn't known the truth, I would have believed every word. Did Sarah Dean make it? I asked, naming her old roommate who I knew was active on social media. Sarah? Oh no, she had a last-minute emergency. Some patient crisis. You know how it is. Another lie. Sarah had posted pictures from the reunion all weekend, complete with a "Where's Victoria?" comment that had gotten several replies wondering the same thing. That's too bad. Did you take any pictures? You know me, terrible about that. I was too busy catching up to remember. She yawned theatrically. I'm exhausted. Think I'll shower and head to bed. I'll be up in a bit. She kissed my forehead again, that same clinical touch, and headed upstairs. I heard the shower start and pulled out my phone to check the cloud storage. The cameras were working perfectly. That night, as Victoria slept beside me, I lay awake planning. She'd made her choice, whoever she was with and whatever she was doing. Now I had to make mine. But this wasn't going to be some simple divorce, some division of assets and moving on. No, there was something bigger here, something darker. I could feel it. My phone vibrated with a text from Ray. Reeves is dirty. Not just affairs, financial crimes, possibly drugs. Tread carefully. I looked at Victoria sleeping peacefully, her face innocent in the darkness. How deep did this go? And more importantly, how far was I willing to go to find out? Monday morning started like any other, except now I was watching everything through a different lens. Victoria made coffee, kissed me goodbye, another peck on the forehead, and left for her shift. As soon as her car cleared the driveway, I called Mike. I need you to run the Murray project today. I've got something to handle. Everything okay, boss? It will be. I drove to Tommy's office, a nondescript space above a check cashing place. He had a wall of monitors showing various feeds and a filing cabinet that probably contained enough dirt to bury half the city. Your wife's been busy, he said, pulling up files on his computer. That weekend at the resort? They barely left the room. Room service 3 times, champagne, the works. He showed me photos, not explicit but clear enough. Victoria and Reeves at dinner, holding hands. Walking on the resort grounds, his arm around her waist. A kiss in the parking lot that looked anything but professional. There's more, Tommy continued. I did some digging on Reeves. The guy's got problems. Gambling debts, 3 mortgages on properties that should be paid off, and some interesting connections to pharmaceutical distributors. What kind of connections? The kind where controlled substances go missing and money appears in offshore accounts. I sat back, processing this. You're saying he's dealing drugs? I'm saying he's got access to prescription drugs and financial problems. You do the math. What about Victoria? Is she involved? Can't tell yet. But she's been signing for a lot of medical supplies lately, more than her department usually uses. This was spiraling into something much bigger than an affair. Keep digging. I want everything. I left Tommy's office and drove to the hospital. I had legitimate business there. Sullivan Construction had the contract for the new wing renovation. But today, I had a different purpose. The administrative offices were on the third floor. I knew the layout well, had been here dozens of times for meetings. But I'd never paid attention to the details before. The security cameras, the access points, the flow of personnel. Mr. Sullivan, Dr. Patricia Hawkins, the hospital administrator, greeted me warmly. Hear about the renovation timeline? Actually, I wanted to discuss expanding the security system installation. I've noticed some vulnerabilities. Her expression sharpened. What kind of vulnerabilities? Camera blind spots? Unsecured access to pharmaceutical storage? Gaps in the keycard logs? I could put together a proposal if you're interested. Very interested. We've had some inventory discrepancies lately. Nothing major, but concerning. Inventory discrepancies, another piece of the puzzle. We talked for 20 minutes about security upgrades, and I managed to get a tour of the areas in question, including the pharmaceutical storage area where Victoria worked. Dr. Sullivan is actually one of our most meticulous inventory managers, Patricia said as we walked past Victoria's department. Although? Well, we have been going through more certain medications than usual, but trauma's been busy, so that's probably it. I made appropriate noises of agreement while mentally filing everything away. That evening, Victoria came home early for once, around 6 p.m. She seemed nervous, fidgety. Good day? I asked from the kitchen where I was making dinner. Her favorite pasta dish, the one I'd made on our first date. Fine. Busy. You know. She was scrolling through her phone, frowning. Jack, have you noticed anyone watching the house? Watching the house? No, why? I thought I saw the same car a few times today. Black sedan. Probably nothing. Tommy was good, but apparently not invisible. Probably just someone lost. This neighborhood all looks the same. She nodded, but didn't look convinced. I'm going to review some cases in my office. She disappeared upstairs and I heard her door lock. She never locked her office door. The next few days fell into a pattern. Victoria became increasingly paranoid, double-checking locks, looking over her shoulder, taking different routes to work. Meanwhile, I gathered information like I was preparing for a construction bid, methodically, thoroughly, leaving no stone unturned. Tommy's surveillance revealed that Victoria and Reeves met twice a week, always at different locations. Sometimes hotels, sometimes his penthouse apartment, once on his yacht at the marina. The pattern suggested not just an affair, but planning sessions. Ray called Thursday night with more information. Reeves is being investigated by the DEA. They think he's part of a prescription drug ring, selling opioids and benzos to dealers. Nothing solid yet, but they're building a case. Should I tell them about Victoria? Not yet. We don't know how deep she's in. Could be she's innocent, just having an affair with the wrong guy. But I knew Victoria. She was too smart not to notice if something illegal was happening. And those inventory discrepancies, the extra medical supplies. Ray, I need you to do something for me, unofficially. I'm listening. Can you run a financial check on Victoria? See if she has any accounts I don't know about? That's tricky without a warrant, but I know a guy. Forensic accountant who does freelance work. It'll cost you. Money's not an issue. Friday came with another fake emergency at the hospital. Victoria called at 5 p.m., voice apologetic. Massive trauma coming in, multi-car pileup. I'll be here all night. On a Friday night? That's rough. I know, baby. I'm so sorry. Don't wait up. I waited exactly 1 hour, then drove to the hospital. The parking lot was calm. No sign of emergency activity. No ambulances. No rush of personnel. I called the ER from my car, disguising my voice. Hi, my friend was in a car accident. Multiple car pileup? Can you tell me if they're there? Sir, we haven't had any major traumas today. Are you sure you have the right hospital? I hung up and drove to Reeves's penthouse building. Sure enough, Victoria's Mercedes was in the visitors' parking, alongside the red Maserati. Instead of confronting them, I went home and started planning my next move. The affair was just the surface. There was something much bigger happening, and I needed to understand it all before I made my move. The weekend passed with Victoria supposedly attending another medical conference, this one in Boston. She'd shown me the registration confirmation, the hotel booking, even the flight itinerary. All fake, as Tommy confirmed. She never got on the plane. Instead, she and Reeves drove to a cabin in the mountains, the same one they'd visited 3 times in the last 2 months according to credit card records Tommy had somehow accessed. They're not just going there for romance, Tommy told me Sunday morning. I had someone check the place out. High-end security system, privacy fencing, and lots of late-night visitors. Cars with dealer plates, if you know what I mean. They're using it as a distribution point? That's my guess. Your wife and her boyfriend are in the drug business. The revelation should have shocked me more, but somehow it made sense. The paranoia, the secretive behavior, the money issues Reeves had despite his surgeon's salary. They were dealing drugs, using their medical access to supply dealers with prescription medications. I spent Sunday afternoon at the office, but not working on construction plans. Instead, I was building a different kind of blueprint, a plan to bring them both down. First, I needed concrete evidence. The surveillance footage and photos proved the affair, but not the criminal activity. For that, I'd need more. Second, I needed to protect myself and my assets. If Victoria was involved in federal crimes, our joint assets could be seized. I called my lawyer, Stan Kowalski, Ray's brother, because in my neighborhood, everyone was connected somehow. I need to restructure the company, I told him. Put everything in a trust, separate from my personal assets. This about Victoria? Stan, like his brother, didn't mince words. Maybe I can have paperwork ready by Tuesday. But Jack, if she's done something criminal, you need to tell me now. Attorney-client privilege and all that. I don't know anything for certain. I'm just being cautious. Smart. I'll also recommend a good divorce attorney, just in case. Victoria returned from her fake Boston trip Sunday evening, full of stories about presentations she'd attended, colleagues she'd networked with. She even had a conference tote bag and program guide, props she'd probably ordered online. How was your weekend? She asked, unpacking with practiced efficiency. Quiet. Got some work done at the office. You work too much. She came over and actually sat next to me on the couch, something she hadn't done in months. Jack, we need to talk. My heart rate spiked. Was this it? Was she going to confess? I've been thinking about our future, she continued. We're not getting any younger, and we've always talked about retiring early, maybe traveling. We have enough saved for that. Well, that's the thing. I've been looking into some investment opportunities. High-yield medical investments. The returns are incredible. There it was. She was trying to get me to invest in her drug operation without me knowing it. What kind of investments? It's complicated. Pharmaceutical distribution mainly. A colleague of mine, Dr. Reeves, has connections in the industry. He's gotten amazing returns for other investors. The audacity of it took my breath away. She was using her affair partner to try to launder drug money through our legitimate assets. How much are we talking about? Maybe start with 200,000. We could liquidate some of the construction company stock. That's a lot of money, Vic. I'd need to see paperwork, prospectuses, the usual due diligence. Of course. I'll get you everything. Tony, Dr. Reeves, can explain it all better than I can. Maybe we could have dinner with him this week. Dinner with the man she was cheating on me with. The man she was running drugs with. The sheer balls of it. Sure, set it up. She kissed me then, on the lips for the first time in weeks. It tasted like betrayal. Monday brought a breakthrough. Ray's forensic accountant found 3 accounts in Victoria's maiden name, totaling nearly $500,000. Deposits were regular, always just under the $10,000 reporting requirement. Classic structuring to avoid federal notice. She's been at this for at least 8 months, Ray told me over coffee. This is serious money laundering, Jack. Federal crime, 10 to 20 years serious. What should I do? You have 2 choices. Turn it over to the feds now, or gather more evidence first. But either way, this ends with her in handcuffs. I need more evidence. I need to understand the whole operation. Ray looked at me carefully. This isn't about justice anymore, is it? This is about revenge. Can it be both? He sighed. Just don't do anything stupid. And keep me in the loop. The moment this goes sideways, I'm pulling you out. Friendship or not. Tuesday's dinner with Reeves was set for Thursday night at an expensive steakhouse downtown. I spent the intervening days preparing, including a special shopping trip to an electronics store that catered to private investigators. The wire was state-of-the-art, completely undetectable, with a transmitter that could send audio to a receiver up to a mile away. I also bought a pen with a hidden camera, just for backup. Wednesday night, Victoria was almost giddy with excitement. Tony's really looking forward to meeting you properly, she said. He's heard so much about your business success. I'm sure he has. Jack, this investment could change our lives. We could retire in 5 years, travel the world, do all these things we talked about. When we were young and in love, I couldn't help the edge that crept into my voice. She paused, looking at me strangely. We're still in love, aren't we? Are we? Of course we are. Why would you even ask that? The lie came so easily to her. I wondered if she even knew she was lying anymore, or if she'd convinced herself that running drugs and cheating were somehow compatible with loving me. Just work stress. Sorry. She accepted this, going back to her phone where she was probably texting Reeves about their plan to rope me into their criminal enterprise. Thursday came dark and stormy, which felt appropriate. I dressed carefully. Good suit, but not my best. Expensive watch, but not the Rolex. I wanted to look successful, but not ostentatious. The wire went under my undershirt, the pen camera in my jacket pocket. Tommy was parked in a van 3 blocks from the restaurant, recording everything. Ray was on standby in case things went bad. Victoria and I arrived first. She dressed to kill. Red dress, diamonds I'd bought her for our anniversary, perfume that probably cost more than most people's car payments. She was nervous, constantly checking her phone. He'll be here, she said, more to herself than me. Reeves arrived 15 minutes late, all apologies and charm. He was handsome in that obvious way. 2 white teeth, 2 perfect hair, too much cologne. His handshake was firm but somehow oily. Jack, I've heard so much about you. Victoria talks about you constantly. Does she? I kept my voice neutral. Oh yes, your business acumen is legendary. I'm hoping some of it might rub off on me. We ordered drinks. Wine for them, scotch for me. The small talk was painful, dancing around the obvious. Finally, over appetizers, Reeves got to the point. Victoria tells me you might be interested in an investment opportunity I'm involved with. I'm always interested in good investments. Tell me about it. He launched into a practiced pitch about pharmaceutical distribution, supply chain management, leveraging hospital relationships for better pricing. It sounded legitimate on the surface, but I knew what to listen for. So, essentially, you're buying medications from hospitals and reselling them to other medical facilities? In simple terms, yes. But it's all about the margins. We can acquire certain medications at significant discounts and redistribute them where they're needed most. Certain medications like opioids? He paused, glancing at Victoria. Among others, yes. Pain management is a crucial part of medical care. And you have the proper DEA licenses for distributing controlled substances? Of course, everything is completely above board, but there was sweat on his forehead now. Good, good. And the returns you're promising? 30% annually? That seems high for legitimate pharmaceutical distribution. Well, we have very efficient operations, low overhead, direct relationships with suppliers. Suppliers like Victoria. The silence was deafening. Victoria's face had gone pale. What are you implying? Reeves asked, his charm evaporating. I'm not implying anything. I'm just trying to understand how my wife fits into this investment opportunity. She works in pharmaceutical inventory at the hospital. She has access to controlled substances. She's been signing for more supplies than her department uses. Connect the dots for me, Doctor. Jack, Victoria started, but I held up my hand. No, let him answer. How does my wife fit into your business model? Reeves stood abruptly. I don't have to listen to this. Victoria, we're leaving. Sit down, I said quietly. Both of you. Something in my tone made them both freeze. 25 years of commanding construction sites, of dealing with union bosses and city officials, had given me a voice that could stop people cold. You're going to sit down, and we're going to discuss this like adults. Because right now, I know about the affair. I know about the drugs. I know about the offshore accounts. And I'm trying to decide whether to handle this privately or turn it all over to the DEA. They sat. Victoria was shaking. How? She whispered. How did I figure it out? Come on, Vic. 20 years of marriage and you thought I wouldn't notice? The late nights, the new perfume, the fake conferences. I've been watching you for weeks. It's not what you think, she started. No? Then explain it to me. Explain how you ended up in bed with this man, stealing drugs from the hospital, laundering money through offshore accounts. Make me understand how the woman I married became this. She started crying then, mascara running down her cheeks. But I'd seen her cry before, at movies, at funerals, when she wanted something. These tears meant nothing. It started innocently, she said. Tony and I were just colleagues. Then we started talking more, and there was attraction, and you decided to destroy our marriage. It wasn't like that. I was lonely, Jack. You were always at work, always focused on the business. I needed more. So you found it with him? A drug dealer? I'm not a drug dealer, Reeves protested. It's pharmaceutical arbitrage, completely different. Call it whatever you want. You're taking controlled substances meant for patients and selling them to dealers. That's drug dealing. You don't understand the medical industry, he said, trying to regain his composure. There's always surplus, waste. We're just redirecting it efficiently. Efficiently into the hands of addicts? Into the hands of people who need pain management but can't afford traditional channels. How noble. And the $500,000 in offshore accounts? That's just your charitable contribution? Victoria's tears stopped. How do you know about that? I know everything, Victoria. Every hotel room, every dinner, every transaction. I know about the cabin in the mountains where you meet your dealers. I know about the inventory you've been stealing. I know it all. If you go to the police, I'll be ruined, she said. You ruined yourself. Please, Jack. I made a mistake. Several mistakes. But we can work through this. Couples therapy, whatever you want. I laughed, actually laughed. Couples therapy? You think a few sessions talking about our feelings is going to fix federal crimes? What do you want? Reeves asked. Money? We can cut you in. You really don't get it, do you? I don't want your dirty money. I built my business legitimately with my own hands and sweat. I don't need to steal from sick people to make a living. Then what? You want Victoria? Fine, she's yours. We'll end it. Victoria looked at him in shock. Tony! What? He knows everything. We need to be practical. And there it was. Their relationship in a nutshell. No love, just mutual benefit. She was his inside source. He was her excitement and money. When threatened, he'd throw her away like garbage. I don't want her, I said, and the words hurt more than I expected. That woman, the one I married, she's gone. Died somewhere between the first lie and the first crime. So what happens now? Victoria asked quietly. I stood, pulling out an envelope from my jacket. Divorce papers. You'll sign them uncontested. You'll take your clothes and personal items and nothing else. No alimony, no claim on the business, nothing. That's not fair. I supported you while you built that company. You supported me? You worked, yes, but I worked 18-hour days. I took the risks, made the connections, built it all. And while I was doing that, you were building your own little criminal empire. If I sign, you won't go to the police? I looked at her for a long moment. This woman I'd loved, shared my life with, planned a future with. Now she was just a stranger in a red dress. I haven't decided yet. I left them there, walking out into the storm. Tommy's van was waiting. Got it all, he said. Clear as day. That's conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, money laundering, the works. Good. Make copies. One for Ray, one for my lawyer, one for me, and one for safekeeping. What are you going to do? What I always do. Build something better from the wreckage. The next few days were a blur of legal maneuvering. Stan helped me secure all my assets, moving everything into protected trust before Victoria could make any claims. Her lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Morse, tried to negotiate. My client is willing to sign the divorce papers, but she needs some financial consideration. She's accustomed to a certain lifestyle. Your client is a criminal, Stan replied. She's lucky we're not going directly to the FBI. You have no proof of criminal activity. I slid a flash drive across the table. Restaurant recording. Your client and doctor. Reeves discussing their drug distribution network. Would you like to hear it? Patricia listened to 5 minutes before stopping it. I need to speak with my client privately. They came back 20 minutes later, Victoria looking defeated. She'll sign, Patricia said. Everything as you've laid out, but she wants assurance you won't go to the authorities. No deal, I said. She signs and takes her chances. That's not acceptable. It's not a negotiation. She signs, or I go to the DEA today, right now. I have an appointment in an hour. Victoria signed. Her hand shook, but she signed every page, initialing where required. 20 years of marriage dissolved in ink. As she stood to leave, she turned to me one last time. I did love you, you know, in the beginning. I know. That's what makes this so much worse. She left, and I never saw her again. Not in person, anyway. The next phase of my plan required patience. I couldn't go to the authorities immediately. That would be too obvious, too connected to the divorce. Instead, I waited 3 weeks, then had Tommy make an anonymous tip to the DEA about unusual activity at the hospital. The investigation moved faster than I expected. Within a month, federal agents were crawling over the hospital's pharmaceutical records. Within 6 weeks, they'd identified the discrepancies. Within 2 months, they had warrants. The arrests happened on a Tuesday morning. I watched from my office window as federal agents led Victoria out of the hospital in handcuffs, local news cameras capturing every moment. Reeves was arrested at his penthouse, apparently trying to flush evidence down the toilet. The trial was a sensation. Prominent surgeon and respected ER doctor running a prescription drug ring. The media couldn't get enough. I stayed away, letting justice take its course, though I did provide some anonymous tips about where they might find additional evidence. Victoria's lawyer tried to paint her as a woman led astray by a manipulative man, but the evidence was overwhelming. Her signatures on inventory forms, her fingerprints on medication bottles found at the mountain cabin, the money in her accounts. Reeves tried to make a deal, offering to testify against Victoria in exchange for a lighter sentence. But the prosecutors had enough on both of them. They didn't need to make deals. The sentencing happened on a cold December morning, 8 months after that night at the restaurant. Victoria got 8 years federal time, no parole. Reeves got 12. The judge called their betrayal of medical ethics appalling, and their exploitation of the opioid crisis unconscionable. I sat in the back of the courtroom, wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses. When the bailiff led Victoria away, she turned and scanned the crowd. Our eyes met for just a moment. I saw recognition, understanding, maybe even acceptance. Then she was gone. Ray met me for drinks that night at Murphy's. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Empty," I admitted. I thought I'd feel victorious or vindicated or something, but I just feel empty. "That's normal. Revenge is like sugar. Gives you a rush, then leaves you crashed." "It wasn't revenge. It was justice." "Sure it was." He raised his glass. "To justice, then." We drank in silence for a while. "What now?" Ray asked. "Now I rebuild." The business is doing better than ever. Turns out being the guy who exposed hospital corruption is good for getting hospital contracts. I've got a meeting next week about renovating the entire Metropolitan General Pharmaceutical Wing. New security systems, new protocols, the works. And personally, I'm seeing someone. Melissa, she's a nurse actually. Worked with Victoria, always suspected something was wrong but was too afraid to speak up. We started talking during the investigation. "That's good, Jack. You deserve happiness." Maybe. Or maybe I just deserve what I get. 6 months later, I got a letter from federal prison. Victoria's handwriting, still perfect despite everything. "Jack, I know I have no right to write to you, but I needed to say some things before it's too late. The cancer is aggressive, and the prison doctors say I have maybe 3 months. I want you to know that I understand what you did and why. I even respect it in a way. You were always a builder, always focused on foundations and structures. I was the one who broke the foundation of our marriage, and you did what you had to do to clear the ground. I won't ask for forgiveness because I don't deserve it. I won't make excuses because there are none. I was greedy, selfish, and cruel. I threw away the best thing in my life for excitement and money that meant nothing in the end. But I want you to know that the early years, the good years, those were real. When we were young and poor and dreaming of our future, that was real love. I'm sorry I couldn't hold on to it. Be happy, Jack. Build something beautiful with someone who deserves you. Victoria." I read the letter 3 times, then burned it. The past was past, and I had foundations to pour. The news of Victoria's death reached me through Ray. She died on a Tuesday, alone in the prison medical ward. Reeves didn't even send flowers. He was too busy appealing his sentence. I paid for her funeral, though I didn't attend. Her family came from Ohio, confused and angry, unable to understand how their brilliant daughter had fallen so far. I could have explained, but what was the point? The dead deserve some dignity, even if they didn't earn it in life. Melissa and I married 2 years later, a small ceremony at the construction site of the new children's hospital my company was building. It felt right. building something that would heal people on the ground where I'd learned to heal myself. We had the reception at Murphy's with Ray as my best man and Mike as my witness. During the toasts, Ray said something that stuck with me. Jack Sullivan is a builder. He builds structures that last, relationships that endure, and when necessary, he builds justice from the rubble of betrayal. But most importantly, he builds forward, not backward. He was right. The past was foundation work, necessary, but meant to be built upon, not dwelt in. 5 years have passed now since that night I faked a cough and started uncovering the truth. Sullivan Construction has grown into one of the largest firms in the state, specializing in medical facilities with state-of-the-art security systems. We've won awards for our innovative designs that make drug diversion nearly impossible. Melissa and I have 2 kids, twins, born premature but fighters from day one. We named them Hope and James because hope is what keeps you building. And James was my father's name, a man who taught me that foundations matter more than facades. Sometimes late at night, I think about Victoria. Not with anger or sadness, but with a kind of distant curiosity. How does someone go from promising to love and honor to stealing and betraying? Was it gradual, like erosion, or sudden, like a structural collapse? I'll never know, and I've made peace with that. Some foundations can't be repaired, only replaced. The hospital, Metropolitan General, invited me to speak at their ethics symposium last month. The topic was Integrity in Infrastructure, How Physical Security Supports Ethical Practice. I talked about the importance of building systems that make it hard for good people to do bad things, about how temptation grows in spaces where oversight is weak. After my talk, a young resident approached me. "Mr. Sullivan, I heard about what happened with your ex-wife. I'm sorry you had to go through that." "Don't be sorry," I told her. "Every building needs demolition before renovation. The trick is knowing what to salvage and what to scrap." She nodded like she understood, but she was too young to really get it. Understanding comes from experience, from having your own foundations tested. As I drove home that evening, I passed the exit for the cemetery where Victoria was buried. I'd never visited, never felt the need, but that day, something made me turn off. Her grave was simple, just her name and dates. No beloved wife, no devoted doctor, just the facts. I stood there for a while, not talking, not thinking much of anything. Then I placed a single rose on the stone, not red for love or white for forgiveness, but yellow. In the language of flowers, yellow roses mean new beginnings. Because that's what her betrayal gave me, in the end. A new beginning, a chance to build something stronger on ground I'd cleared myself. The drive home was peaceful. Melissa had dinner waiting, the kids were doing homework, and life was good. Not perfect. Perfection is a facade that always cracks. But solid, built on truth and trust, and the knowledge that I could weather any storm because I'd already survived the earthquake. That night, as I helped my daughter with her math homework, she asked me about my work. "Dad, why do you like building things?" I thought about it for a moment. Because when you build something right, with good materials and a strong foundation, it lasts. It shelters people, protects them, gives them a place to grow. That's immortality in a way. What about when buildings fall down? Then you clear the debris, check the ground, and build something better. Every failure is just education for the next success. She seemed satisfied with that and went back to her equations. But the question lingered in my mind. The truth is, we're all builders in our way. We build relationships, careers, families, lives. And sometimes, despite our best efforts, things collapse. The measure of a person isn't in never failing, but in what they build from the rubble. Victoria built a house of cards on a foundation of lies, and it collapsed exactly as it should have. I built a case for justice on a foundation of truth, and it stood up to every test. But more than that, I rebuilt myself. From a man who trusted blindly to one who trusts wisely. From someone who ignored red flags to someone who sees them clearly. From a husband who was betrayed to a husband who is cherished. The construction metaphors come naturally to me, maybe too naturally, but they're how I make sense of the world. Life is a series of projects, some renovations, some new builds, some demolitions. The key is knowing which is which and having the courage to swing the hammer when necessary. As I write this, it's been exactly 10 years since that morning I started faking a cough. A decade of demolition and rebuilding, of justice and growth, of endings and beginnings. Melissa sometimes asks if I regret how things ended with Victoria, if I wish I'd handled it differently. The answer is complex. Do I regret the marriage? Number. Those early years were real and they shaped who I became. Do I regret the divorce? Number. It was necessary, like amputating an infected limb. Do I regret sending her to prison? This is harder. Sometimes I wonder if I could have just walked away, let her and Reeves continue their crimes without my involvement. But then I think about the patients who didn't get their pain medication because it was sold on the street. The addicts who overdosed on pills that should have been in a hospital pharmacy, the trust that was broken in a place meant for healing. No, I don't regret it. Justice isn't revenge when it protects others from harm. The story made the news again recently. A true crime podcast wanted to interview me about the prescription passion murder, their sensationalized name for something that wasn't a murder at all, just a killing of trust. I declined. Some stories don't need retelling, just remembering. But there's one last thing worth sharing, something that happened just last week. I was visiting a construction site for a new addiction treatment center we're building. Full circle, in a way. A man approached me, shaky, thin, but with clear eyes. Mr. Sullivan? You don't know me, but I wanted to thank you. For what? I was one of the people buying pills from that network your wife was part of. When it got busted, I couldn't get pills anymore. It forced me to get clean. Been sober 3 years now. He shook my hand and walked away before I could respond. But his words stayed with me. Every action has ripples. Victoria's betrayal rippled into crime, addiction, broken trust. My response rippled into justice, forced sobriety, institutional change. We never know the full impact of our choices, but we're responsible for them nonetheless. The foundation work is done now. The ground is solid, the structure is sound, and I'm building toward the sky. Not because I've forgotten what came before, but because I've learned from it. In construction, we have a saying, measure twice, cut once. In life, I've learned a corollary. Trust slowly, verify always. But we keep building. Always forward, always upward, always stronger than before. Because in the end, that's what we do. We take the materials life gives us, love and betrayal, trust and suspicion, justice and mercy, and we build something that will outlast us all. My name is Jack Sullivan. I'm a builder, and this is what I built from the ruins of my marriage. A better life, a stronger family, and the knowledge that sometimes the best thing you can do with a rotten foundation is tear it down and start over. The cough that started it all was fake, but everything that followed was as real as poured concrete and steel beams. Real pain, real discovery, real justice, real healing, and real love, eventually. The kind built on bedrock, not sand. That's my story. Not a tale of revenge, but of renovation. Not about destroying a life, but about saving several, including my own. The foundation cracks led to a complete rebuild. And what I built is stronger than what came before. It always is, when you build it right.